and welcome to this month's Movie Club Emporium live stream. Stream. Everything's working out just peachy keen right now. Just up front, some apologies. Discord is being, discourteous. And so, apologies if we do get a little break up here and there. So we're running a tad behind, but plenty of time for everybody to jump in, because this is going to be a fun one. But yeah, so welcome to the Movie Club Emporium. This is our monthly Twitch live stream. We do these every single month. In case you missed it last month, for February, we did our best and worst of 2024, which was a lot of fun. And this month, we are going to pay tribute and really deep dive into, I'll go ahead and say it, he always kind of floated around that Mount Rushmore for me. Of course, Nick and I both love Carpenter and some others, but what had really kind of solidified himself as maybe my favorite filmmaker, David Lynch, who sadly passed away earlier this year. And so we're going to give him a cool send-off by going through his wild and weird filmography. Before we get into that, again, like I said, we do this every single month here at Twitch. And we also have a YouTube channel where these will go up at a later date. And also we do have weekly videos. I haven't been able to get to the theater. My days off have changed here for the last few weeks. They're going back to normal, but haven't had a lot of time to go to the theater. Also, there really hasn't been, frankly, anything come out. I mean, since the last time we spoke. And so what I've been doing is kind of working on our secret project. And it can't really guess be a secret if I'm putting them out, but some of our old archive episodes from our Facebook lives, which are apparently going away. So I got them all downloaded and have been re-editing them and putting them up. And that's a lot to say. Hello. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Just working on troubleshooting some of these issues we're having here tonight. It's like we're back on Facebook doing lives again. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm recovering from having hip surgery and a whirlwind trip to Oklahoma a few weeks ago where we got to spend some time together, which was far and away the highlight of that rather unfun trip for the rest of it. I was down there for a funeral and see family and whatnot, and yeah, so I get to spend a few days with you, hanging out and watching some truly awesome movies. Yeah, I've been in this room I'm sitting in for the last 10 days or so, just recovering from getting my hip worked on, but healing up well, and yeah, ready to get back on my feet again because it's been old laying around and hobbling around on crutches, although I have got to watch TV and I have got to watch some movies and some do a little bit of gaming. So it's been nice to relax, but kind of getting cabin fever at this point. So this did give me a good chance to revisit some David Lynch movies that I hadn't seen in a while, and one that I had never seen, and one that I probably didn't need to see, but I watched it anyway for the good of this episode. So yeah, doing all right.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that we are definitely gonna have to at some point when the audio is better on our end. From what I'm seeing in chat, audio sounds great for everybody. It's just whatever the Discord between you and I is audio. Yeah, we are definitely gonna have to get some time to sit down and talk about the stuff we watched while Nick was down here in Oklahoma, because we watched some wild and fun stuff. And honestly, watched we while shortly after watching some movies, one of which starred kind of a our type of movie legend. We lost that legend as well. So also R.I.P. to Winks Hauser, who passed away a few weeks ago, and we got to watch him be the best part of one of the weirdest and wildest movies I've seen in a long time. But we will definitely get into that at some point. But for now, we're going to be talking about the great and weird and just all around original, I feel, um, David Lynch. And when we get to, we'll kind of, there is something we're going to kind of put off for a future live. We'll get into that. If you know David Lynch, you can probably figure out what that is pretty easily. But we're gonna start at the very beginning. And I used to own it on DVD. It's probably somewhere in our storage unit. A DVD of the short films of David Lynch, which I think you and I watched maybe exactly one time and hadn't revisited.
Yeah.
Um, but we were gonna start with his first official release, 1977's Eraserhead, and I want to start with this quote he's doing an interview with the Daily Mail. It is my favorite David Lynch quote, and I've got a few for the night, but this one is my absolute favorite of all time. Uh, he's doing an interview about Eraserhead, and he says, "I believe." He says, "Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film." And the interviewer, who's kind of taken aback, says, "What? Elaborate on that." And Lynch says, "No." And to me, that's kind of the heart of Lynch. Lynch is like, "Here's my stuff. You figure it out. What do you think it means?" And starting right off the bat with Eraserhead. So, do you want to start with Eraserhead, or do you want?
Oh, I'll start us off. I did not see this until a week ago. This is a quintessential David Lynch film, one that's truly, I mean, put his name out there. But it's one that I just never got around to watching. And I mean, it's a bizarre black and white nightmare of a film, but in its essence, that's what it is. And that's kind of what I think Lynch specializes in, is putting nightmares and dreams on film. Um, I mentioned to you and talking about it that if I had seen this movie 15 or 20 years ago, I wouldn't have cared for it. But watching it now that I'm older and wiser, I get it. I felt like I understand what it was getting at, of this being the nightmare of the working class man and the life he lives and the roles he's supposed to fill in terms of work and family and fatherhood. And I think this is a very personal project for Lynch, because he was, dealing with a father this time, dealing with being a father at this time, and trying to still chase his dreams of making movies. So this is a very personal project, and I think we're getting a lot of what Lynch was feeling at this time, dealing with it, um, dealing with a screaming baby that never stops, and you get that with the disturbing looking mutant sheep head baby, the famous eraser head baby. So we get some of that. It's a strange one. It's gross. It's macabre. But man, I'm glad I finally got around to watching it, because I think it's a great, well done movie, and I understand why it left such a mark. And I'm glad at the time it came out in the late 70s, it could have easily gotten swept under the rug, but it didn't. And a lot of critics really heaped praise upon it, and I'm glad. What did you think? We've never talked about Eraserhead.
So yeah, I did not see this until probably, we were Ashton was born, but he was young. probably two. It's probably like between 14 and 15 years ago. Um, and like you said, like if we had watched this has been one of our high school finds. I don't think you or any of us would have given this movie a second thought. We would have just completely
No,
blown it
not at all.
off if we'd even finished it. Um, Again, having watched it, at the time as a young father, definitely is what it pulls you to. So I watched a couple of documentaries that I'll kind of bring up here and there. The first one is from 2016. He did called The Art Life, and it's just kind of it's just almost like a day in the life of him working on this painting, while also kind of like going through his life in these like one sided conversations up into the films. And so when he's talking about right as he got the grant to make Eraserhead, he was with this woman, his first wife Peggy. Uh, she unexpectedly was pregnant. They had a child. They were living in like the slums of Philadelphia, and he hated Philadelphia. He hated the smell of it. He hated the look of it. And then like knowing that stuff, and then looking at this movie, like he denies it being about fatherhood, but like if you hear him talk about that time of his life, and then you watch this film, it's not hard to see like this movie is about just kind of like the oppressive weight that comes with that old mentality of like, well, you're an adult now, and you have to now provide for this new family, and it's everything in this movie is so oppressive. And Henry, who is such a meek character to begin with, he has his fantasies, and he doesn't know what to do, or who to be to best take care of this child thing, and the mother is not handling it well, and you have these tertiary characters like uh her parents, the most like the idea as somebody who had to go with their partner to a parent's house to tell those parents, uh sorry, the cat bounced off the dryer, that they're going to be unexpected grandparents, and how like terrifying and awkward that is. The scene at the house with the dancing bleeding chickens is like the best representation of just how insane a moment that is if you're going through it. Now this movie, again, at like high school Jason, not on your life, like early late 20s, early 30s, new dad Jason. This movie hits hard while also being this like insane piece of weird pulp like filmmaking. You have the black and white. You have like this industrial, overbearing soundscape, like this almost um, threatening wind that blows throughout the whole movie. Uh, you have all this insane imagery with the overlaying shots of Henry Eraserhead, with like the weird like sperm worm, and there's the weird boiled man pulling the levers, and you're like, what does that mean? You have the lady in the radiator. Um, there's just so much going on that to just say that this is a movie just about like, man, being a new parent, scary, huh? Like there's a lot going on, besides just that overbroad um, kind of description of it. But yeah, like I said, this was quite a quite a piece. And then like I hadn't watched it since that time. I remember when I watched it, making a Facebook post joke about it, being like, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I was eating a bowl of like Count Chocula, but I was stone cold sober watching Racerhead. um, I can definitely see why this picked up momentum on the like the midnight movie scene. Although it is weird to think like this was usually shown in a double bill with Pink Flamingos, because they couldn't be more different of films. Uh, but no, like this one really kind of out the gate shows you what to expect. Um, with the Lynch movie, there's other movies later where we kind of talk about ways to kind of like ease people into Lynch. And those movies are definitely more have broader appeal, but I feel like sometimes you got to rip that band-aid off first. And what this is kind of like the piece to be like, oh, you want to get into like David Lynch and like weird avant-garde cinema, buckle up, Buttercup, because here's Eraserhead.
It's it's a wild ride. It's very low budget, but doing so much with so little is impressive. You know, it's held together by a kind of a spacey performance by Jack Nance as the main character, and it's just also a theme that shows up in David Lynch a lot: suicide, because that is thoroughly, I think, a theme of this movie as well, and the escape from this oppressive environment. Overall, I it's not like a super fun movie to watch, but I'm glad I did watch it, and I think it's a very well done movie. Throw this out there: we're not doing full blown reviews for each of the movies. We're just briefly touching on every one, kind of
Yeah,
giving you all a little overview of what we're thinking of.
yeah. I was gonna check to see if I had anything. I got notes of it. No, that's pretty much it. So then moving on. In 1980, he does one of only two of his entire filmography. Two of his films are set 100% in reality. This being one. His follow up was 1980's The Elephant Man, a dramatized account of John Merrick, uh, also known as the Elephant Man, for having a horrific um, uh, problems with physical problems that left him severely deformed and was to this day is still kind of a wild oddity. Um, and it's to me is kind of like an easy follow up to Eraserhead, but also is very weird because there's a lot about this movie that doesn't scream Lynch about it. Number one, like I said, it's totally in reality. Although there are some dream sequences that Merrick has about his mother, but this movie is produced by Mel Brooks. Uh, this movie has like an all star cast of of English actors: Anthony Hopkins, John Hurt, who plays Merrick under some incredible um, prosthetics, and Bancroft is in it as well. Um, and also, to me, this is the first one. Beside, after like later on, Lynch would definitely apply the idea of kind of like you have this idea of like the for the most part like the glamorized version of Victorian London, and you see kind of Merrick get there, but then finding out being brought into that world is far more detrimental to him than it was almost being, you know, part of the sideshow that he's in. This was it's a really beautiful art, and it's easy to see why it was nominated for Academy Awards. I think this he did Lynch himself did win a honorary Oscar a few years ago. This is as close as he got to like competition wise. It's a beautiful film. Um, Again, beautifully shot in black and white. It's just one that I kind of feel like after when we get into the later Lynch films, this one and another one we'll talk about much later is kind of lost in the shuffle. But I think this is definitely one that you could very easily use even more so than some of the other like Lynch movies as kind of an interest to be like, well, check out, you want to see like a kind of a uh yeah, kind of like a highbrow art, Oscar worthy film. This is the one.
Oh, I think one of the telling things about this movie is the fact it was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. It tied, I believe, with Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull the same year. And let me tell you, having seen both, I think this is the vastly superior movie. This is also a reach and watch for me. This one wasn't as easy to find. It is not available for streaming anywhere, even to rent. I had to find a copy on the Internet Archive. If I would have realized that sooner, I could have ordered a copy. I watched a copy on the Internet Archive where the audio was a little off, but it was watchable enough that I could see it. It's one I need to buy and watch on the big screen though, because I just watched it on my laptop. Because this is an amazing movie. It's one of two movies Lynch did that I think are pretty straightforward. They're not too out there plot wise or bizarre. They don't take too many strange twists, and I think it does justice to the person that was John or Joseph. I've heard both names referred to of John Merrick.
Yeah.
Uh, he's referred to in the movie, played absolutely excellently by John Hurt. John Hurt is having to act underneath a mountain of makeup and an oral device that it greatly affects the way he talks. Just as John Merrick talked with difficulty due to the malformation of his mouth. Um, it's and you have Anthony Hopkins as this doctor that's looking after him and examining him, that treats him with kindness and compassion, but also grapples with, am I treating this guy like a sideshow as well? Because he rescues him from this terrible circus sideshow that is horribly abusing him, and looks after him and sees the person underneath this beautiful soul that he is. And and it's amazing seeing that and seeing the character of John Merrick coming out of his shell and interacting with people, the society, and the joy he finds in whether it be architecture or the stage or the conversations he has with people or family. It, you get to see, by all accounts, he was such a sweet, genuine, very intelligent person, which, from what I hear, is historically accurate. And you feel for him, what a tortured soul he is due to the congenital defects he was born with that are just, the fact that he was able to function as well as he did is inspiring, because you're talking about a person, he couldn't even lay down to sleep or else he would suffocate to death. And he was in pain every moment of every day of his life. His appearance horrified people. And there's that part, the famous scene where he's in the train station and a bunch of people are following him in the corner of the bathroom, and he says, "I am not a man animal, I am a human being." And John Merrick was a human being and deserved that respect. This movie shows that there's a lot more to people and there's a lot underneath, and that we really need to treat people on the basis of who they are, not their appearance. Um, I think it's an excellent movie. I think John Hurt should have won Best Actor the year this came out. I've never seen. I think it was Ordinary People, which won that year. I I've not seen Ordinary People, but I'd be willing to bet this is a better movie. It's excellent. I think the choice to shoot it in black and white was a great idea. I think everything about this movie, it works so well, and it's an amazing movie, and it's an inspiring movie, and just beautiful and sad and tragic, and just Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt are so incredibly good in this movie. I loved it. I'm sad I slept on it for so long.
Yeah, as the physical media guy, will pimp. The Criterion does have a great Blu-ray of it. Supposedly, it's getting a 4K, which I hope it does because black and white 4K looks incredible. This movie deserves to be seen. Yeah, it's it's so funny now that it's so hard to get because it feels very timely now. Only because in its simplest form, this is a movie about the study of empathy, which is
Yeah.
something that could be looked at with great kind of the great need for it now. So yeah, it's a great film. Well, this works out because I know the next film is very close to your heart. 4 years later, after turning down Return of the Jedi, which if you've never heard David Lynch talk about meeting George Lucas and being pitched Return of the Jedi, you can find it on YouTube. It's a very funny clip of him talking about not wanting to do that at all, which is so weird that he would then go on to do Dune, the first iteration of Dune in 1984. So, Nick, I will let you take this one.
Okay. Um, this was such an odd project. He was such an odd choice to make this movie. You watch Eraserhead, then you watch The Elephant Man, which are a pair of black and white movies that delve in more into drama. So, who do you want to get to do a bizarre sci-fi epic with a massive budget and an all-star cast? David Lynch, who at this point is still pretty new as a director. He's a younger guy. Um, and definitely, okay, he put his own spin on this movie. Now, if you've never seen Dune, it's a sci-fi epic that takes place in the year 10,191, having to do with these various factions that are vying for control of the planet Arrakis. The planet Arrakis is the only source of this substance called the spice that they use for space travel. It is the backbone of the economy of this universe, and it is so incredibly valuable. People die in the millions just trying to control it. Um, and it's one of the strangest mainstream science fiction movies ever. David Lynch made a lot of changes from the book because he thought a lot of the things from the book would not translate over to screen. And I'll be honest, I think in some cases in 1984, he was probably spot on that some of the things from the book weren't going to look great on film. One of the biggest ones being that there's a lot of fighting in the movie. And in the book Dune, they fight using hand-to-hand combat due to the prevalence of personal combat shields. So they're out there fighting with knives and swords in the desert and using martial arts. He was quoted as saying that he didn't want to make kung fu in the desert. He didn't want a martial arts. He thought it would not translate over to film. Um, it, and again, he may be right there. So he made some changes to the combat and the technology within. Um, which were later changed back in the later versions of Dune. But he saw this universe for the depth and how unique it was, and how different this movie was going to be from other science fiction movies. You can see his fingerprints all over this movie. It there's so many strange visuals, and there's dreams and premonitions and out there storytelling and internal dialogue. This is very much a David Lynch movie. Although apparently was due to studio interference, it turned out drastically differently than he intended. They butchered it up, and he was very unsatisfied with the end result. Some releases will have it showed as being directed by Alan Smithy, which is the pseudonym that directors use when they don't want to be associated with the project. I haven't seen Lynch's cut, but I can understand seeing some of his other movies. He may have thrown a little too much weirdness in there, even for Dune. Uh, whatever the case, I love this movie. I think it is a flawed movie, but you can't help but admire how bold and ambitious and wild it is. The sheer amount of talent, the music, the visuals. It's an incredible movie. Critics and the audiences at the time did not agree. This was a tremendous flop, and critics bashed it. Um, It is a movie that's not for everyone. If you don't like it, I completely understand. I personally love it. Although the newer versions, directed by Denis Villeneuve, I would say are definitely superior. Um, it's something. It's one of the biggest spectacle films of the '80s, in my opinion, and it is a sight to behold.
Yeah, it's so funny because you watch this movie, and yeah, I think the Lynch's original cut was like almost 3 hours. Um, but you watch this movie, and then you watch um, the documentary that came out about Alejandro Jodorowsky, his original trying to make a Dune movie. And the thesis of that documentary was just like, it was just too wild and out there. And you're like, what? What was too wild and out there? That they were just like, no, no, David Lynch is the much safer choice to direct a Dune movie. Um, yeah, like we talked about before, I have grown to appreciate this movie. When we first watched it in high school, I was somebody who was, I was a Star Wars kid and Star Trek, and so watching this, I was like, well, this looks awful, and like it's just a lot of talking and sandworms. Well, and then later on reading Dune, and then of course uh Villeneuve's new his films. It is. I don't know that this is necessarily should be praised at all as an adaptation of Doom, but just as like a just a wild like this is David Lynch's sci-fi film. The one and thankfully it did flop because um it led to David Lynch basically kind of like John Carpenter leaving the studio system and saying no, 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 I'll have final say over what my films are. Thank you very much. Um and but after watching this, do I do kind of want to see that David Lynch Return of the Jedi. Uh I just lost his first name, Nance. Like he's the head Ewok or whatever. He's an Ewok in David Lynch's world. Like I'm sure it's gross looking, but I'm totally down to see what happens in that movie.
It definitely leads to some interesting questions. And that's the here we are, and Star Wars comes in at '77 and completely changes the game. Everybody is scrambling to get the next sci-fi epic out because it's like printing money. The attempts at making sci-fi epics in the time after release of Star Wars, they made for some interesting movies, but like this movie and the Black Hole are two of those that I don't know why anyone would watch Star Wars and like, oh, we're making the Black Hole and Dune and think they would remotely appeal to the same audience because they do not. Uh, they're Dune and Star Wars have besides the fact they're both big sci-fi movies have zero similarities. There's like no crossover in terms of appeal.
That's
But
true, but also it's funny that because that Lynch does his own thing with the material because if he had done a very faithful adaptation like we're getting now, the first two Doom movies and what Doom Messiah will be, um, you know, uh, I feel like they would have been even more bashed because people would have felt like, oh, this is just a blatant Star Wars ripoff, not knowing that, oh no, most of Star Wars is taken from this novel.
yes, but this thing most people don't realize how influential the Dune novels were, and the fingerprints are all over modern sci-fi or sci-fi of the last 50 years plus. Um, yeah, this is one near dear to my heart. This is one I've seen by far the most time. It's also one that if somebody says, "Man, I didn't care for it," I get it. Um, but man, what a cast! I can at least thank David Lynch for assembling this kind of cast and the I still think stunning visuals in this movie.
But like we said, so thankfully the deal that he got from Dino De Laurentiis was do Dune, and I will produce your next film and give you total creative control, which he did in 1986's Blue Velvet. And to me, this is really the start of what a David Lynch movie is, as far as like pop culture is concerned. I mean, Eraserhead was a cult film, a midnight film. Elephant Man, you did get some, critical nominations and stuff like that. But this is the one that really kind of sets the tone for the most of the rest of Lynch's filmography. Um, it also, to me, also kind of really points out that David Lynch really hated the 50s. Um, which comes up a lot in other films too, because I do have a quote here from him about this film. He said, I discovered that if one looks a little closer at this beautiful world, there are always red ants underneath. And I think to me that a lot of his films, whether it's 50s Americana, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's one's own perception of what is real, um, there's always two sides. There's always an underbelly to whatever the thing is. So as kind of, especially you think of in the 70s and 80s with shows like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and things like that, we were really diving into how great and awesome the 50s were, for a select group of people. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
there was some quite harrowing things going on underneath the surface of that blue picket or that white picket fence, which Lynch so expertly um, does not only in the opening of this film but throughout. Um, and it's truly not only that, but crafts, to me, one of the greatest neo noirs of the last 40 years with this movie. We're introduced, and also my favorite, even more so than another character. This is my favorite, Kyle MacLachlan. Um, because this movie starts with his character, and he is that naive, optimistic, oh shucks, you know, American teen. And by the end of this movie, after he's taken through the 9 circles of hell, um, is able to come out the other side. But man, this movie gives us a great performance by him. This movie gives us one of the greatest, if not the greatest, movie villain in all film. Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth, um, to me, is the scariest movie monster you'll ever see, regardless of finger knives or hockey masks and machetes. He's one of the most terrifying characters. And I love the mystery of this. I love the music in this. The weird things that the scenes that take place with Dean Stockwell. That's just everything about this movie encompasses everything that I would come to love from Lynch as a filmmaker. And this is kind of the one that, to me, really set him up as this is my distinct vision. And no matter how many people have tried to copy Lynch, there is one David Lynch, and this is the start of that. What are your thoughts on Blue Velvet?
I will. I told you later. I ranked my David Lynch movies. This is my number one David Lynch movie of all time. Um, I think it is an. I think it is such a masterfully done movie, and the way it's shot, the way it tells the story. Um, this is one of the more accessible David Lynch movie, and I would say the most accessible of the weird David
Yeah,
Lynch movies
yeah,
because it makes sense. You can definitely follow along without too much trouble, but it has such a bizarre cast of characters in it. Um, and a lot of them interacting is like Kyle MacLachlan and his girlfriend Laura Dern. just these two young, naive 50s kids going along and thinking their little town of Lumberton, which lumber. So I'll throw this in here real quick. On the front page of the paper, they memorialized David Lynch because David Lynch is from the Northwest, from the inland Northwest here, born in Missoula, Montana. He's lived in Sandpoint, he's lived in Spokane, and several of the towns, including Lumberton and the town of Twin Peaks, are inspired by this area and take place in this region. And it is watching this, I kind of think it's like this looks like Spokane in the 50s. Kind of this, industrial area, but sort of a smaller town feel, even though there's more to it. Uh, but it's amazing. The strange characters, of course, the scariest being Frank Booth, who is utterly terrifying in this movie. If you see behind me, I've got a color pencil drawing here that my friend Travis got for me for my birthday this year. Frank Booth in the famous scene where he turns around and is huffing nitrous, or it actually never explicitly says it's nitrous, huffing gas through this mask and with this tank system he carries around. He seems like a drugged out psychopath. Not a much of a stretch for Dennis Hopper, who's all accounts kind of a wild man anyway. But he's terrifying, and you completely buy him in this role. When Colin McLaughlin's character gets in the car, and then they go on a ride, you are just on the edge of your seat because you have no idea how this is going to pan out and what's happening because he is stuck in a car with an absolute lunatic. Gene Stockwell is creepy. Isabella Rossellini, man, what a performance as Dorothy, Frank's sort of girlfriend, lover, and somebody who gets intertwined with Colin McLaughlin's character. She's great. There's so many tense scenes in this movie. It's just the heart pounding in her chest. You don't know what's going to happen next. It's beautifully shot, wonderfully put together. And this one really speaks to me because you and I grew up in the same small town. And this idea that beneath the civilized, shiny veneer, there's darkness underneath, it's true. Oh, is it true? There's so much hiding underneath. And this peels back the wallpaper and lets you see what's really underneath. And it's amazing. If you're going to see any David Lynch movie, I would say see Blue Velvet. It's great. It would probably be worth it to do a full breakdown of it at some point, but fantastic. 5 out of 5. I think it's a masterpiece.
And it's funny because I grew up, we're of the age that we grew up in. I don't know about you, but I watching Siskel and Ebert on CBS on Saturdays in the afternoon. And most of the movies that they talked about at the time, I never saw. I don't remember watching this particular review, but I remember watching this movie. And yeah, for a long time, this one was one of my favorites. And then you go and watch that Siskel and Ebert review where they just completely trash this film. And I remember being the first time being like, oh, maybe they don't know. Maybe they're not the kings of film criticism because clearly there's something that I'm getting that they are not getting in this film. Which I think happened a lot more than history, revisionist history would allow you to believe. But I do find it funny. This was kind of the first one where I was just like, oh no, you totally don't. What? You totally missed the mark.
Hold on. Checking something real quick on
Yeah.
that because I have a different recollection of that conversation. I've been going back.
Siskel was
And
more into it than Ebert was. Ebert really hated it.
he loathed this movie. He thought it was just absolute garbage. I believe this made Gene Siskel's. Yes, here it is. Gene Siskel rated it the fifth spot in his best movies of 1986, and Roger Ebert I think made it into his worst list. They were so on polar opposites of this, and that's one. Look up the review because it is
Yeah.
a classic disagreement. Because Roger Ebert just thought it was trash.
Yeah.
Just like with The Thing, they were wrong. He was wrong.
Yeah. He notoriously, I think that was the most famous of his, but I feel like he notoriously hated most of Lynch's stuff.
He was not a fan. I think he had something of appreciation for Eraserhead a bit. For the most part, he was not a fan of Lynch. David
Lynch
Lynch
and
isn't for everybody.
yeah, just ask my beleaguered wife every November when I make her watch one David Lynch movie a year. Uh, all right. So here's where we hit a snag, and it's not a snag. It's just a conscious thing we're doing. So next in his filmography is, of course, he created the television series Twin Peaks, which ran for 2 years from in 1989 to 1991. And then again returned for a third season, kind of, in 2017. Now, I love the idea of us getting deep into everything Twin Peaks, but there is not enough time in the day right now for us to do that. So know that at some point, maybe, we're not saying when, but at some point, uh, Twin Peaks will get its own live stream where we'll cover the 3 seasons of the series, because it would just be too long an episode to cover all the movies and Twin Peaks as well. Um, so having said that, 1990, we're we're brought into a film that is another adaptation, which I've never read the novel. I do want to, although I know he does add a lot to it. I think I can safely say that this is Amber's favorite Lynch film, Wild at Heart. I know this being my number one when we did our, uh, or maybe it was my number one. It was up there when we did our Nicolas Cage best of films. I think it's one of Nick Cage's best performances. We're given yet again. David Lynch gives us another utterly terrifying cinema monster with Willem Dafoe's Bobby Peru. And this is a movie that kind of overtly leads into a great documentary that I watched today that I am going to highly, highly recommend everyone check out. Because it's his overt uses of the Wizard of Oz in this movie. But this, and its base form is Luna and Sailor, Laura Dern and Nick Cage are two star-crossed lovers on a road trip through hell. Meanwhile, her mother, played by Laura Dern's real life mother, who's also an actress, um, encompasses everything a wicked witch would to break them up. And along the way on this road trip, they stumble into some of the wildest and uh, downright scariest places and scenarios you'll run into. And there's just a lot of Wizard of Oz in this movie, and a great, uh, great soundtrack. This is where that very famous, kind of maybe, well, maybe not the only. No, I guess he had the two songs. The more famous of the two Chris Isaac songs, um, "Wicked Game" was used in this film, and also is one of the highest awarded of David Lynch's movies. It won the Palme d'Or um, at the Cannes Film Festival, and is such a kind of just an even more step into what the weird David Lynch film would be. And so, Nick, what are your thoughts on Wild at Heart?
This is another highly rated David Lynch film by me. It's This is an extremely entertaining movie. You get some really manic performance from Nicolas Cage, a pretty wild performance from Laura Dern, and such an interesting, bizarre cast of characters. Uh, One being Diane Ladd, who plays Laura Dern's mother. And if I'm not mistaken, that she actually is Laura Dern's mother, isn't she? Or am I? No. Oh, sorry, I had some feedback there.
Oh, you're good.
Um, Looking at the wrong thing. It is such a yep. Diane Ladd is Laura Dern's
Diane
mother. I had
Ladd,
that
yeah.
right. Um, who's great as Luna's mother, and they're going. You have Nicolas Cage as sailor in a snakeskin jacket in this nightmare road trip across the USA. Uh, and it's weird, and sometimes it takes some unexpected turns, and sometimes it gets a bit confusing, as David Lynch movies tend to get. But man, I am never bored in this movie. I'm always engaged, and this is trying to think of this is probably David Lynch's most violent movie because this movie gets flat out gory at times.
Eh,
There's one fight scene that takes place at a on a staircase in this movie that is brutal. Holy cow! What were you gonna say?
no, I was gonna say, yeah. I think it is. It may be his most violent, and it it'll come out of nowhere. And this movie goes from 0 to 100 in seconds.
It, and there's a shotgun decapitation scene. It just a a, a gruesome car wreck, and it's kind of I don't you don't really see it to that extent as much in the other David Lynch movies, but it's very present here. And I always kind of wondered why, but it's used to good effect. Um, and the ending in this movie, you got to see it to believe it. It's something. I If you want to watch a weird David Lynch movie that you can also probably be a crowd pleaser, it's Wild at Heart. This is, I think, about as weird as David Lynch gets while still being accessible enough and entertaining for the average audience member. It's a very fun movie. This is another David Lynch movie, though, really hard to get a hold of. It's streaming absolutely nowhere. Um, I This latest on preparing for this episode made me think I really need to get some hard copies of some of these movies due to I don't know if they're licensing issues, rights issues, or what. But I rented this one from a Blockbuster back in 2008, and man, it left an impression on me. And what a what a great movie, and easily one of my favorite Nicolas Cage movies and favorite performances of his.
Yeah, this one, I think, I believe Shout Factory has the rights to it. It's one of only two movies of his that aren't in the Criterion Collection. And I don't know if that copy is still in print. I know it should be fairly easy to get, I think, but before that one, it was very hard. I had like an all region DVD from like Spain was my first viewing of it. Back when I had an all region player. But yeah, this one and then it's all this incredible violence and just everything is in excess. Everything's violent. Even the love scenes are violent. Mixed with all this Wizard of Oz imagery. And like I said, there's a excuse me documentary that came out in 2023. I just watched it today. Um, I rented it on Amazon Prime. I highly recommend it. It's called Lynch/Oz, and it is several filmmakers. I know Benson and Moorhead are one of the panels, but John Waters is on it. Just talking about both overtly and then subliminally the constant like connection to the Wizard of Oz that David Lynch has in his films. Very interesting. Highly recommend finding that documentary. Um, while we're not doing Twin Peaks the series, I do want to touch briefly on 1992's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Because this movie is honestly the biggest, uh, in hindsight now, maybe the biggest, the most Lynchian thing you could do. Well, second most Lynchian thing, because we'll get to the other one here in a little bit. But the biggest set of balls on somebody to have the TV show you've created end prematurely because ABC didn't know what they had, and he was kind of tired of fighting them on it. So you announce you're going to do a film. And nowadays, most people would believe, yes, they're going to do a film to wrap up the series. And instead, David Lynch says, no, I'm going to give you a prequel that asks even more questions than the entirety of the television series. And this is actually my first entry into David Lynch because you and I rented this movie when we were in high school. Not knowing the show, like I didn't know the show. Maybe I'd heard the title Twin Peaks. I certainly had never seen it. It wasn't available. We just rented this movie, and I remember it just being like, "What the fuck is this?" But also knowing like it was so weird and dark and like just something like the likes of which I had never seen at the time. Um, but that I just remember it leaving such a huge impression on me that I was like, I want to see more of this guy's stuff because I'm digging on like how this movie like weirdly like affected me by me not understanding it. I wanted to understand it so bad. But what were your thoughts on Fire Walk with Me?
Um, I mentioned to you, I didn't rewatch this one this time around. It's been a while since I've seen it. Yes, I bought this back in high school. I bought this from a video store. I believe it's the Snyder Video Store because, they had a copy cheap and you know, I hadn't watched Twin Peaks. We didn't really, I don't know if it had dropped a DVD yet, so we didn't have a good way to watch it. But I thought, okay, it's a prequel, so we'll be able to watch it. We won't be lost. That was completely incorrect. I was very lost. Um, I think you needed to see Twin Peaks to get the kind of significance of what they were talking about. And without that context, yeah, you stay pretty lost. It's a weird, uncomfortable movie, and you feel like it's David Lynch. Definitely David Lynch movie. It's one we'll break down and talking about its entirety when we do our whole Twin Peaks episode. Because right now, I do not have much commentary on it. So,
Yeah. All right, and that brings us to 1997's Lost Highway. What may be one, if not the most Lynchian. I think when people think of a Lynchian film, this is what they think of. I think this is his most perplexing, and it's definitely his most divisive. So I am curious how this is going to shake out. I will say that I have watched this one, probably a handful of times, maybe 5 or 6 times now in my life. I love it. Same. I I like this movie, if not love this movie, more and more the different times I watch it. Um, I do have a quote here from David Lynch. Speaking about Lost Highway, he says, "I don't think people accept the fact that life doesn't make sense. I think it makes people terribly uncomfortable." This is a movie that I think is lost on a lot of people. This is definitely the movie to me that his next arc here in his Lynchian stuff really dives into the idea of the doppelganger, the separate the kind of his own weird multiverse, if you will, because we're not as a whole species tired of the word multiverse. Um, also what a lot of people find to be probably his hardest to watch. For besides maybe one. But everything about this movie, it's meanness. This weird like there's a weird darkness to this film. Um, you get this like this is as close as David Lynch ever gets to a out and out horror film. Um, you have The Man in Black with Robert Blake's terrifying performance. Another all-star cast. Uh, we'll get into some specifics here in a sec, but first I'll go to you. Um, Lost Highway. Where are you at with Lost Highway?
Oh man, so I'd heard all about this movie, and I remember that. I was alone at home, and I rented it from Hollywood Video 2006, and I watched it, and I had a hard time making heads or tails of it. Watched it a few times since, and watched it in the last week, and it is a it is a movie that's hard to dissect because it is very hard to pick apart everything that's going on, what fits where. But I finally felt this time around, especially with a little bit of internet guidance and kind of reading some others' breakdowns. It's like, okay, I think I understand what he's getting at now. Um, I find this to be an engaging and unsettling movie, even if at times it's very hard to follow. You know, as it's got this musician played by Bill Pullman and his wife, and he supposedly kills her but doesn't remember it. And he goes to prison on death row, and somebody else wakes up and there's a different person there, and I think I finally understand it. But it is this is a movie that is not for everyone, and it is quite confusing. Um, but I think you have some very strong performances here with Bill Pullman, Balthazar Getty, who plays the alternate Bill Pullman, the dream Bill Pullman, depending how you look at it. Um, Robert Loggia is great, and man, Robert Blake is the Man in Black. Supremely creepy. It's this guy in all black who's with this pale makeup on, and Patricia Arquette doing dual roles, and I think does a wonderful job. And I forget, you also get Gary Busey in here and Henry Rollins. It's just you keep on getting more stuff through, more random people show up in it. And Richard Pryor, I completely spaced that he had been in this movie, even if it's in a very brief role. I'm getting random feedback. Um, this is a one that's hard to dissect.
So
I believe
it was one that we covered in the last Neo Noir November we did, and it was only because watching it several times it'd be like, okay, so like what are we saying? And I don't know what it's a line in the movie that's like I don't know how I missed it so many times. Um, but there's a line that Bill Pullman drops about not liking cameras because I actually wrote down the quote so we could. He says, "I like to remember things my own way, how I remembered them, not necessarily the way they happened." And to me, that is kind of a lead-in for a movie coming up where you have. To me, I'll give you my breakdown of it. This is mine and mine alone's. You have the Bill Pullman character. That is the real world. Or the real world of this film. He's a jealous, impotent man. In a fit of rage, he kills his wife. Goes to prison. In prison, the movie takes over as Balthazar Getty. That is Bill Pullman's fictionalized fantasy of who he is. Like he's just this kid, he's got this sweet girl. He's an all American kid, works on cars, does all this stuff, has friends in the right places. He meets this beautiful femme fatale. This is his dream. This is his fantasy. This is how he wants to remember his life. And unfortunately, the Man in Black, who has that camera and uses that camera as a weapon to say, no, no, no. This is what really. This is. It's. To me, it is. Some people have said it's supposed to be a representation of death. To me, he's not death. He's the truth. And he keeps showing up to say, you have to. This is your. He shows up to make you face what you've done. And at the very end, he blows that apart. And unable to accept that, he essentially is lost on a lost highway, meaning his brain is broken. Um, that's the easiest way for me to understand it. That's how I dissect it. Um, Knowing that a movie coming up was originally pitched as a series, a television series, I feel like Lost Highway honestly could have been that next dark, Outer Limits, The Hunger, Tales from the Crypt esque anthology show for one of those networks like HBO, Showtime, wherever. Kind of like it would have been like the horror version of the Red Shoe Diaries, where you kind of have like week to week this somebody else is on the lost highway, and how does that turn out? But yeah, this to me it's very much. It feels like it's a movie of two heads. It's a movie of reality. It's a movie of a man's fantasy of himself, only to be driven insane because the two can't be together. Um, but like I said, that's not any official thing. It's just kind of how I interpret it. Do you have anything to add on Lost Highway, or?
Yeah, I think you're more or less right. I think the things with Bill Pullman, the musician, and his wife that gets murdered, I think that's the reality. I think when he goes into jail, he says he has a headache. He gets meds. They give him a mouthful of meds and he falls asleep. I think that's where the alternate reality shows up. It's like, what if I woke up and I were somebody else? This young, good-looking guy who, he's a manly guy. He's cool. The women want him. I can get the idealized version of my wife that I murdered, who has all this intrigue in his life, and he's smooth. But you have when he's in this dream as this other guy, the reality keeps poking through. Things keep coming through that show him that's just like there's something wrong here. There's a conversation he has with his parents about, because he can't remember how he wound up in jail, that he's kind of, his head's hurting and he's thinking of what else happened, what happened to lead him here. And I think that's reality coming through. And he's having a hard time staying in that dream state to the point where eventually he switches back. Um, I think the end of the movie when he's running from the cops in the car and he starts shaking, I have interpreted that as he's getting the electric chair. That's it. That's kind of the abrupt end of the dream, and it ends abruptly. That's what I
Yeah.
think happened. I think everything, and you're getting kind of up until the time he's incarcerated, you're getting some odd pieces here and there because you're remembering it's showing it to you as he remembered it.
Mm-hmm.
Which again said that part where he says that he doesn't like camcorders because he's like, I want to remember things how I remembered them. That makes sense. As far as Robert Blake's character could be death, I kind of think it could possibly be his darker impulses and his darker half, um, his cruelty, his rage, his murderous intent, all of that rolled into one. But again, I don't know. Interesting characters, interesting movies. I've appreciated it more in repeat viewings. The first time round, it's probably not going to make much sense. But I I quite enjoyed it. It's nothing else if not just very interesting to see where it goes. Also, I must throw in there, got one of my favorite movie cars, Robert Loggia's late 70s Mercedes 6.9 sedan, which has a twin turbocharged V8 with 1400 horsepower. And you get a Robert Loggia going batshit on a guy for cutting him off, which is a great scene itself. Robert Loggia beating the shit out of a guy, giving him a traffic lesson.
And it's something
Um,
we hadn't touched on yet is these weird moments of comedy in these Lynch films. That scene is so darkly funny when he's just like pistol whipping this guy. He pulls out a Desert Eagle on him. And he's just like, "Repeat after me. I will not tailgate." The same thing. The scene. There's a weird scene in Wild at Heart. The other big one for me is the scene in Blue Velvet when uh, Dennis Hopper is yelling at Kyle MacLachlan because he doesn't like he likes Heineken and not Pabst Blue Ribbon. Like there's these weird moments of like the most dangerously comedic moments in these films that almost come out of almost nowhere as the violence does in some of these movies.
it's like I really like the cast that got involved in Lost Highway. I think it's an interesting movie. Robert Loggia is so menacing in this movie and so threatening. He has a phone call with Balthazar Getty's character. It's like, yeah, I'm glad you're doing okay. And you're just like, that is Robert Loggia calling me on the phone and telling me, I'm glad you're doing okay, is terrifying. One of the most terrifying moments in a Lynch movies. Um, yeah, I think we're more or less on the same page as our interpretation of this. I think that's what makes the most sense after watching it again.
And to think that the only real um, that the only bit of like truth behind the movie that Lynch has ever given is that um, the gestation of this movie started because this movie opens with like one of the most chilling things of just somebody speaking into somebody's like home speaker system saying Dick Laurent is dead. And that somebody did that to his house, like somebody just like somebody got up on his like spoke to him over his speaker system early one morning and said something to that effect, and that was kind of the gestation of where this movie started.
Also, you get some vintage Ramstein in this movie. I forgot it shows up in a brief cameo by Marilyn Manson. This is a very 90s movie.
Oh, for
Very
sure.
90s. I'm
Yeah,
here for it.
yeah. That you have the soundtrack is very Trent Reznor, very '90s Nine Inch Nails. And now we go to honestly, I'm going to. This may be controversial. I'm going to say this is the most Lynchian thing that Lynch could ever do. Is he makes a film like Lost Highway, really coming off of the last four films and a TV series. And what does David Lynch do? He makes one of the most simple, beautiful, emotional, straightforward movies you'll ever see. Essentially, for Disney, it's 1999's The Straight Story. And there was something in the water with Masters of the Macabre and 1999 because that same year, Wes Craven made Music of the Heart. Um, this is also this is the second of Lynch's movies that is wholly set in reality. Um, and it is loosely based on the true story about a man who needed to travel a great distance to see his dying brother. He was not able to drive, so he loaded up like a wagon, like a thing, on his lawnmower and drove it across a great distance to see him. And having said it, like to describe the movie that way, kind of makes it sound like a mundane melodrama, and yet this is the most human film I think Lynch has ever made, as well as his most melancholic. Um, this movie comes out of nowhere and really just rips at your emotional core. Um, it is still very Lynchian though. People, the people that I can't remember his first name, but Straight is his last name. That he comes across on his
Alvin.
journey, huh?
Alvin
Alvin.
Straight.
He talks in these almost monologue, uh, just sharing these moments, and it's these weird kind of travel through small town Americana. Um, and all to see a dying brother that he had a fight with. They didn't get along, and so they hadn't seen each other in decades. Um, and just his journey along the way and the trials that he faces to get to the ending of this movie. And it's just honestly one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen in my entire life. And you will not finish this movie dry eyed, I can guarantee you. What are your thoughts on the Straight story?
So I first talked about this movie. I watched it. We did our big Disney episode we did a while back. This is a Disney movie, and we talked about underrated Disney movies, and this made it high on my list because this is a great movie. It is a beautiful movie and a beautiful love letter to the people and the countryside of the American Midwest, to the human spirit, to determination. It's a life affirming movie because you have Alvin played wonderfully by Richard Farnsworth. Who's this man? He's determined to make things right with his brother and go see him and not let things end the way they did. And his daughter, played by Sissy Spacek, who gives a great performance. Uh, but he's determined to make this trip despite the numerous obstacles in his way, like his first lawnmower breaking down. But he gets so much help along the way from people and inspires so many people and runs into so many interesting characters. Uh, this movie and The Elephant Man, don't get me wrong, I love the strangeness of David Lynch movies, but both of the very straightforward movies he made are like perfect 5 out of 5 movies. I wish we would have seen more just straightforward David Lynch movies. And both of these are adaptations of a true story. He had a talent for it. I think a singular talent. He's done it twice and done it so perfectly, but still put his own little odd spin on it. Um, it's the kind of movie I tell people about, I describe it, and people's eyes glass over. It doesn't sound interesting. It doesn't sound compelling, but it is. It is interesting. It is compelling. It will move you. It is an amazing movie, one of the most underrated Disney movies ever, and I think one of the finest movies that David Lynch made. It's fantastic, beginning to end, and we get Lynch regular Harry Dean Stanton in at the very end. So a lot of great people in the cast: Everett McGill, Joseph Carpenter, Sissy Spacek, Richard Farnsworth. A lot of people you kind of see it pop up in other movies. You get to see him here, and it's wonderful. This is just what a beautiful, wonderful movie.
And this is the one, honestly, that is was for me anyway the hardest to come by. Um, it might be on Disney Plus. I'm not sure. I just recently found a decent, I think, imprint out of is an Australian company, and they released an all regions Blu-ray of it. And that's the only way to get it at a decent price because there's a long out of print DVD that was stupid money. And this movie wasn't streaming anywhere. Um, but yeah, like it's such a beautiful film, and it's to me it's so weird. Um, that we didn't get more, but like you said, the two that we do get are just perfect pieces of filmmaking that you could he have done it a third time? I mean, I think he could have, but like, could he have?
Yes.
Um, and I feel like, especially after Lost Highway, it almost. So I'll equate it this way to wrestling. If you've ever watched a wrestling pay per view, You have big match, you have big match. Before you get to the biggest match on the card, you got to have a little bit of a cool down. And I don't mean that as lesser quality. It's just something not quite something to kind of bring everybody down to settle before we really go at it. And for me, that's what this movie does because he does the straight story, and then in 2001 we get to Mulholland Drive. Um, Now it was not long after uh, Amber and I had gotten married. I got into this weird bug of collecting directors' films, and it was David Lynch, David Cronenberg, John Carpenter. I think there were my three big, and there was one more of kind of like the movies, like directors we watched a lot of their stuff. So I was buying all their films, like just on regular DVD, just buying their films. And I'll never forget. Um, I knew Twin Peaks by that point, and I remember hearing about Mulholland Drive, but I remember popping it in and watching it, and it came with. We'll go over it because I have them here. The DVD came with an insert of David Lynch's 10 clues to unlocking the film, which we'll get into how effective they are or are not. But I remember watching this movie. I was off work, and Amber came home, and she said, "What are you watching?" And I said, "I have no idea." Um, I said, "But it may be the greatest movie I've ever seen." And she goes, "Well, what's it about?" I said, "It's been on for 2 hours, and I could not tell you what it's about, but it's probably the greatest movie I've ever seen." And well, like I said, when we get into our rankings, it's this is what I tell people when you always get that proverbial question, especially when somebody finds out, "Oh, you're into movies. What's your favorite movie?" And for years I always had a few answers, switch it up on them. I will say it has been for a few years now. Mulholland Drive is my favorite overall film of all time. It is my number one film. I think it is Lynch's culmination of everything he had done. Again, I don't know what a TV show this would have made, but as a film, um, I think it's his magnum opus. You get kind of what we've been building to with the idea of the doppelganger. You get this look at Hollywood from three very distinct sets of eyes of what that world is like. You get some of the most weird uh, scenes and characters, all of which are so memorable, whether they fully make sense or not. Um, has one of the most just darkest endings of some of his stuff. And again, I'll kind of break down how I interpret the movie. It has one of the greatest film jump scares of all time, and the fact that the movie for 10 minutes sells you on this jump scare and tells you it's going to happen before happening and still scaring the ever loving shit out of you. I just love this film. I think it's his magnum opus, and so having laid that out on the cards on the table, Nick, what did you think of Mulholland Drive?
I think Mulholland Drive is David Lynch's most impenetrable movie. It is very hard to dissect. I'm going to break here and think I think he made it two of twos. Having watched it a few times now, I I understand that more. I think it's probably more confusing than it needs to be, but it's kind of movie. I know it may. I think to David Lynch, it made perfect sense. I think most people are going to watch this and be like, the movie ends and say, I have no idea what the hell I just watched and what happened. Um, However, you do have a bunch of interesting scenes that have you on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen
Check
next.
the weather.
The diner scene with the jump scare is something. Um, and you get some very strong performances and you get a very interesting view on the darker side of Hollywood. Uh, and you have another case of different the same actors playing different characters, but might be alternate versions of characters. Some are, yeah, I said it gets hard to follow of who exactly is who and where they fit into the great theme, the great, uh, into the grand scheme of things. I think I know what's real and what's not at this point. I think I figured it out, and I think most of the movie isn't real. I don't think most of this movie happens. Um, when you get into some Lynch themes about that dark underbelly underneath, and these plucky characters who go in and with optimism, and they are faced with some very ugly realities. And we also get, and I believe that my interpretation of this, you get more about the subject of suicide, which pops up several times in David Lynch movies, and especially pops up here. Um, you can't help but drag you in, though, of trying to figure out the mysteries of this movie. I had that list you sent me of the 10 things to unlock Mulholland Drive, and it helped slightly, a little bit. And again, I went in and I kind of read some other breakdowns because I just want to. I'm not going to pretend, even having watched this a few times, that I watched it this last time is like, I get it. I understand where everything fits in. I didn't. But I think I have a greater understanding of what the meaning of things are. Uh, it's a very dreamlike movie, and given watching this movie, you can really see where the dream is, and it seems dreamlike in its approach and the way the characters act and whatnot. Especially, see, the main character, her name is the actor's name escapes me.
Naomi
Na-
Watt.
Naomi Watts, who just does great. But it's just this naive girl new to Hollywood and kind of trying to make her way and coming in with big plans and big ideas. Naomi Watts is absolutely dynamite in this movie. I say whatever you want about this movie, plot wise, story wise, or anything, but it has some fantastic acting. Laura Herring as Rita. Justin Theroux as Adam, just this extremely hateable, douchey director. Just playing a character that unlikable takes skill, and he did it well. Um, I think we're faced here in this movie. You have the dream, and then you have the ugly awakening from that dream to reality. And I think at times you have the character, Naomi Watts' character in this dream, is realizing it's in the dream. There's especially a scene where she sees Justin Theroux's character on the set of a movie, and it's breaking. She's starting to come out of that dream state into reality. It's reminding her and it's making her uncomfortable. But unlike Mulholland Drive, I don't absolutely love it. I don't have the same high opinion, but man, it's something, and it is a David Lynch film to the core, and it's there's nothing else like it.
So that was honestly the just the beginning of Neo Noir November was secretly a way to get Amber to watch this film. She had done very little Lynch. We did Wild at Heart and Blue Velvet. I got her to watch the first season of Twin Peaks with me before she was like, "No, thank you." But this one was always the one I could never get her to watch. So I'll give you. This is how I. Again, this is my interpretation of it. To me, this movie, like you said, to me, this movie is 2/3 dream, 1/3 reality. But even in that, it's to me, it's three layers of dream. So the first third of the movie to me is the fantasy. It's the Hollywood fantasy. Aw shucks, the girl from the middle of nowhere went and became a star, ma. And she found true love, and she was just gonna be the next big thing. And that movie starts to fall apart. With the Club Silencio and the opening of the box, that scene with the stuff going on stage, the constant reiteration that this isn't real, which is that scene where the female singer is lip singing the Spanish version of Roy Orbison's "Crying," which is a beautiful scene, and then you realize, oh, she's just lip singing, and the trumpet player is not really playing the trumpet. That leads from the fantasy to the bad dream, which is like, oh, I went to Hollywood and I met somebody and we were in this together and they got famous and I didn't, and now we're riding this jealousy train. And it should have been me, but it wasn't because I didn't sleep my way to the top like they did. Um, and then it falls into the third dream, which is the nightmare, which is real life for me. This is Naomi Watts. She moved to Hollywood and she didn't make it. And she's done nothing but grow bitter over it. And she is in this bad breakup with her girlfriend. She's doing drugs and popping pills and can't take it anymore and offs herself. And that's the tragic story of Hollywood. For a lot of people, you know, when you see the films about the Hollywood dream, again, it's all part A of this film. It's never, you very rarely get to see the film about the 2/3 of the people of Hollywood who, you know, end up moving back home to Iowa or, you know, succumb to some terrible ending because Hollywood is a machine and it chews you up and spits you out. And to me, that really is what he's saying. And of course, I know a movie definitely got more eyes again right after the Me Too stuff happened, you know, with the wine scenes and all. And Hollywood was really put under the microscope then because whether on purpose or not, this movie in 2001 was touching on a lot of stuff that was coming to light in the mid aughts. But to me, that's been the easiest way to understand it. That's how I interpret it. And then yeah, I was like looking at these clues, reading them, and I'm going like, I feel like these are almost. He kind of wants you to understand the film, but these are also a giant troll.
Yes.
But yeah,
he's not throwing you a bone. He's like throwing a
no,
lug wrench at your head. It's
yeah, it's a real like, oh, you're drowning. Here's a cinder block. Like
it's like, oh, you look lost. Then he hands you a rabbit possum. You're just like, okay, what? It's it's engaging. It's one I will watch again just to further understand it. It's one that I have a feeling with more viewings and more understanding, I will my understanding and appreciation of it will also evolve. Because I mean, it's a polished, well-made movie, and I said it's never not interesting. So the scene at Club Silencio and all that, I think, is a very key component of it. And I think it's really telling you a lot of what's going on. And that's something I picked up on in this latest viewing is pay attention to the very beginning and what happens at Club Silencio, and you will get a lot more clues to what's actually going on.
the Club Silencio, that is one of my favorite visual scenes of the film. One of my all time favorite scene of the movie though is this weird, and it makes no sense, and it's the scene and just with Justin Theroux and the cowboy, because you have this guy who's not William Sadler and he's just supposedly, if you read some theories, he's like the physical manifestation of Hollywood. He's old Hollywood. He's Hollywood is built on the Western film. He's the Duke. And he's telling Justin Theroux how if you want to get ahead in Hollywood, this is how you do it, kid. But that scene with them at like the ranch and the way that's set up and is weirdly threatening and ominous, and then you realize makes no sense whatsoever. But it's just this great two guys just like acting off each other, and it's a fantastic performance by Thoreau. I've never been a huge Justin Theroux fan. Um, I think when he's allowed to be a character like this, like he was on The Leftovers, where he's totally an asshole and he's an unforgiving asshole, but there's just this one little thing you kind of like about him. It's the scene where he goes home and his wife's having an affair with Billy Ray Cyrus, the pool guy, and so like his
That
need
is
for
so.
his need for revenge is he just pours pink paint all over her jewelry.
That, that scene with Billy Ray Cyrus is so out of nowhere, and it's like comes home and finds his wife, girlfriend in bed with a mulleted Billy Ray Cyrus, who ends up punching him. It's this movie has so many moments like that it's like whether or not you're following on to what's going on, man, you're gonna remember this scene, which happens a lot of this movie. David Lynch writes terrifying villains, but villains that are terrifying in a way that's hard to pin down, like Robert Blake's character in Lost Highway, like Robert Loggia's character in Lost Highway, Frank Booth, um, the evil or like the Elephant Man, the circus director guy, or the guy who's um, runs the boiler downstairs and exploiting John Merrick. He writes all these characters that are scary. Uh, Bobby Peru and Wild at Heart. You just go down the list of these frankly terrifying characters. The cowboy, he's a terrifying character. I can't explain why, but he seems like the kind of guy that can make bad things happen to you, and no one would ever know what happened to you.
Yeah.
And that scene, right? That scene between those two is excellent. And every time I watch that scene, it's like, are you sure that's not William Sadler? Because man, does he look like William Sadler?
It might as well
Holy
be.
cow! But it's a movie that begs further viewings and further dissections and conversations to figure out what exactly is going on. Although, in researching it, talking to you, the diner scene with the two guys where they're discussing the terrifying homeless person in the alley. Still don't know where that fits in. I'm not gonna lie.
I
I don't know
don't
if it's
know.
supposed to fit in.
I don't know, but it totally is. Again, it's one of those things where like it's 10 minutes of this guy telling you about this jump scare before walking. You're literally with him walking into that jump scare, knowing it's coming, and when it happens, it's still just you will scare the shit out of you when it happens.
If you want to know, it's like teaching a class on how to write tension in a scene and how to make a scene in broad daylight in a diner where seemingly nothing scary is happening, utterly terrifying. That's the scene. Man, I remember I watched this movie in film class 15 years ago for the first time, and man, that scene freaked everyone in the class out. It's great.
Yeah, I will say for this one, I know this movie, the one we're getting ready to talk about, and Eraserhead, as well as that Art Life documentary, are on Max. So
Yes.
those are a little more readily available. And so with that, I will say as much as I love Mulholland Drive, we're going to talk about now David Lynch's last official feature film. And for me, everything that David Lynch does perfectly in Mulholland Drive is overdone to where it's almost. Well, we'll get into it. It's 2006's Inland Empire. To me, this movie is definitely kind of. He kind of picks up and does a more. To me, a more confusing, more David Lynchian version, less focused version of Mulholland Drive. With this movie, it doesn't help that. It also doesn't help that for whatever reason. Uh, Most of these movies, whether you like them or not, are impeccably shot. Um, I cannot remember the cinematographer's name. His last name is Demme, but it's not Jonathan Demme. He shot a lot of stuff for Craven too. It's his cinematographer for a lot of these. Um, but this movie, it's shot on that mini DVX, and so regardless of the film, it looks like trash. Um, but to me, this one is very much hyper unfocused. This one feels. I don't know. Like I said, as much as I love Mulholland Drive, like this is the weird kind of not great version of that movie.
It's
um,
it, it seems it seems like a film student's attempt at trying to make Mulholland Drive. It's shot in an ugly manner in settings and surroundings that don't grab your eye and aren't engaging. The colors don't pop. Um, I don't think a lot of the actors in this really knew what to make of it. Uh, Laura Dern, just who's very talented in a lot of other works, just doesn't seems kind of lost in this movie. Uh, and this movie's 3 hours long. This movie was a chore to sit through. Wow.
yes,
I didn't care
yeah,
for it at all. I'll just throw that out there.
yeah. It to me, it is definitely, and this is kind of depending on how you look at Twin Peaks: Return, which some people say it's the third season of the series. Others say it's just an 18-hour David Lynch film, and you're both correct. But it is kind of sad that this is the last big released film he did. He did some like small films. There's one on Netflix that's like 5 minutes long of him talking to a monkey. Um, and he did some more like short films like that. There was that cartoon he made that I never saw called Dumbland. If you can find it, I remember it came out on DVD the same time as that short film DVD, but never found it anywhere. Or I think maybe Hastings had it. It was like one of those like, oh yeah, it's a $45 DVDs. um, it is said this is kind of the last one because again, it feels like, and this one leans heavily into the dream world, the doppelganger stuff. But again, it all feels so much more unfocused, and I can't. Part of me thinks it's because of the way it's shot. It's just an something shooting on a film, shooting a movie like this, it worked for something like 28 Days Later. Like it puts you kind of in that film. A movie like this, shot in this manner, it's so ugly to look at, and it's so long. And again, it's kind of hitting the same themes as he did so much better, 5 years before. And like you said, like actors pop up in this movie, like Jeremy Irons pops up in this movie, and you can tell Jeremy Irons is like, "What are we doing again?" Like, there's just
Yeah.
so much long, weird takes. The stuff with the bunnies is something. It's just kind of an this is the most Lynchian film, and by that I mean it definitely is his most. To me, it's his. I say Lost Highways is most divisive, but I feel like it's this because there are people who love this movie. And even when I say at the beginning, David Lynch is my favorite film director, and I don't hate this movie, but it to me is definitely the least of his films, and by a big gap between number 10 and number 9. So it is kind of a hard one to go out on. I would say it'd be one to be studied, but I don't know that I would want to do that. It's definitely the one I revisited the least. I watched it when I first bought it, and then I watched it again when Criterion released the 4K of it. And I'm gonna tell you right now, 4K doesn't do this movie any favors either.
No, I'm gonna
um,
do anything for this movie.
yeah. So it kind of ends on a wet note until we get into the Twin Peaks of it all. But Inland Empire, that was the last official David Lynch film, and I know, sadly, 2 years ago, I think, a little before, like right around the time there was talk about uh, Coppola doing Megalopolis. There was like, oh, did you hear David Lynch is also doing a film that's coming to Cannes? And like, there was a lot of hype behind it until like right before Cannes, David Lynch did one of his weather reports and was just like, no, I don't got anything. And that's something too. Is after we won't dig into like you can definitely tell through that art life documentary. He began his artistic career in paintings and stuff like that. He kind of tripped into films. He says from a dream of being like, oh, what if I could make a moving painting? Had this career in film and then was like, I kind of want to just get back to making art. Because he did paintings. He did, like I said, it was a cartoon. I think he did he put out a music album. Like he made music. Um, and then of course he like started. He was huge into transcendental meditations. So he had like tapes on that. Um, and then he would do these kind of adorable um, weather reports, the David Lynch like daily weather report, where he would just get online for 5 minutes a day and be like, the weather in Hollywood, it's nice and sunny, and then like kind of give you like a word of encouragement, and that was it. Um, and so for nothing else, the guy was a constant artist and always working even when he'd stopped making films. Although I do wish there had been just one more film to kind of cap off his filmography. Although having said that, and having seen Francis Ford Coppola come out of retirement and what he brought us with Megalopolis, maybe it's best that we ended with Inland Empire.
I need to break away for a minute, pal. I'll be right back.
Absolutely. Oh. So yeah, here in a minute we're going to actually rank Lynch's films, our rankings of them, because that's it's the internet, so we got to do that. But I do want to say I appreciate you guys hanging out. Lynch was always on our list, and it's one of those things where Nick and I kind of came to Lynch at different times and not together, which is one of the few directors that we really like that happened. We were both huge into Carpenter, Cronenberg, Craven, all those guys, those horror guys. Um, at the same time, and it's just so funny that we both have this relationship with Lynch, but they weren't together, and yet so much of our feelings about these films do line up. So if you've never really dove into Lynch, I do highly recommend it. Plus, all that to mention, he was also a regular voice on the Cleveland Show, and it was like he played David Lynch on the Cleveland Show as himself. But yeah, to me it's definitely the thing of a guy who was uncompromising in his vision, who uh, didn't abide the idea that Hollywood, it's a movie, so it has to make sense, and we all have to go home happy. Um, and I think it was a definitely original voice um, through several decades, and made some incredible pieces of art. Um, so, do you want to get into our rankings of the
Wait,
David Lynch
I
filmography, or did you have some
just want to
final
add on.
thoughts on Lynch?
I think he was. There's no one like him. I think he was. I don't think there ever will be another David Lynch. He was a true artist. He was uncompromising in his visions. By all accounts, from everything I've ever seen, he was a sweet guy. Um, I love. I think I loved his hair. I've emulated his hairstyle in the past. He's a guy. It's like he loved coffee and cigarettes, which show up constantly in all of his movies. Everyone's always drinking coffee or having a smoke, which is it's a miracle he made it well into his 70s before he passed, considering how much that guy loved smoking. There's not a whole lot of people in Hollywood that I would want to meet and have a conversation with. He was one of them, and I truly believe he was the kind of guy that he could have a conversation with anybody and engage with them and treat them with that kind of respect. He seemed like a truly decent human being. He was one of the most deeply introspective voices in Hollywood, and it comes through so much in his movies. What he's feeling, what he's thinking. He put his heart and soul into every project he did, except for Inland Empire. I'm sorry, I think he phoned it in that movie. Um, I think it was a shame that's what he ended on. I would have loved to see him do another biographical film with somebody. I mean, think about it. David Lynch does Vincent Van Gogh's life. Could have been real interesting. There's so many people I would love to see him dissect their life, or do one about a president or famous leader. Given what I was able to do with Alvin Strait and John Merrick, man. But his mysterious movies, his movies that are a little hard to decipher, he did it in a way that even if you didn't understand it, you were still engaged, you were still interested, and you still couldn't look away. He made movies, he made spectacles, he made beautiful movies, he made ugly movies. These movies ran the gamut, and it was a pleasure going back and revisiting some of these and seeing some for the first time. As I said, Sleeping on the Elephant Man was a huge mistake. Him dying, it's made this year a lot sadder because you and I have bonded over him so much for over half of our lives. Even though he hasn't made a movie in almost 20 years, he'll be missed. And I love knowing he was out there still being David Lynch, still doing his thing. And he was himself and he was true to himself. I don't think he ever sold out. I don't think he ever made something he didn't believe in. Aside from maybe Element. Who knows? But he'll be missed. The world's a little less strange now that he's gone. But let's get into our rankings.
All right, so I think this first one will go 10-1. This one should come as no surprise. And of all the ones on this list, I think this is for sure the one I knew that instantly we would agree on. And again, it's not a film that I hate. It is his weakest film, and I would say that, and I said it by a large margin. So when we get into like 9 and above, know that there's 10, and then there's a gap.
Yes.
But number 10 is Inland Empire. It's, to me, it's unfocused. It again, yeah, it feels like somebody trying to out David Lynch. And if it was at least like a an interesting film or a beautiful film to look at, you might win me over because I'm into the weird stuff. I mean, David Lynch is a favorite filmmaker. That's the thing too. Is like we never got that David Lynch A24 movie. Um, but this one, it's because it's so ugly to look at and it's so long and just kind of feels like trotting. It's my number 10.
I mean, easily, it's no question. And I was watching in the Empire, said this is going to be our least favorite by far, for all the reasons you described and more. It's one of those. It's completely avoidable, and I think it's the only like bad film he made. My number nine. This goes. This is one. This list could change upon repeat viewings, and this is by default my number nine. Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, just because I need to go and watch the series in its entirety and watch this. I'm sure I will get a greater appreciation for it. It's an interesting movie. I was missing too much context.
So do you remember how we agreed so strongly on 10? Uh, this is a hot take, and again, there's a huge gap. I do love this movie, and I do have reasons why I'm making it number 9 on this list of 10 9 from now on, 9 solid films from my favorite filmmaker. My number 9 is Dune.
Oh,
Um,
I'm not surprised.
I have grown to respect it. I do love that David Lynch. It's the David Lynchness of it. It hits number 9 mostly because, well, several reasons, but the two biggest ones are the fact that we never really got his version of the film. For a lot of people, this was an Alan Smithy movie, and he never really got to see his full vision brought to life. And then on top of that, now it is fun to see as a piece of like this story in on that amount of budget. But when I'm thinking Dune, I'm gonna for forever think of the new Villeneuve movies because they are the story of Dune, and so while it is fun to watch and it is a great piece of like in that era of post Star Wars stuff like that, I do love like Flash Gordon, a little bit of He Man. This film, it doesn't hit that top level for me.
No, it, and I'll get into that because it's further down my list. Any criticisms of Dune, I will probably not disagree with it. It is not a masterpiece. It is a deeply flawed movie I love. So what's your you start us off with your number eight?
All right, so my number 8 is Twin Peaks Firewalk with me. I think it rises slightly higher than Dune, mostly because of just the to me it has more of the nostalgia bug because it was our first Lynch film. Also, just the balls to be like, "Oh, you want closure? Fuck you. Here's more questions." Um, while also I think being able to dive into the parts that he of Twin Peaks that you most certainly were never gonna get on ABC. The stuff leading up to the death of Laura Palmer and the darkness. This movie does so much to set up how dark the dark parts of Twin Peaks is. That I feel like watching this and then going into the show, I think makes when the show does get dark, whether it's with Bob or the stuff like that where you get into the red room, it makes that so much scarier because he was kind of able to really turn it loose in this movie.
My number eight, you'll heavily disagree with, is Mulholland Drive. I feel that he makes movies that are a little hard to understand at times, sometimes a lot understand at times. Mulholland Drive, aside from Inland Empire, which I'm classifying completely different, is a movie that it's one of the ones rewatching. It's like, okay, I think he's purposely being obtuse here, and really trying to throw too many curveballs with too little explanation. I do really like this movie. I do. I will watch it more, but it's like it's like David Lynch. I think you're fucking with us a little bit. It's kind of the impression I got watching Mulholland Drive again, but it's memorable and it is very much worth watching. I mean, from like Inland Empire #10, everything else, watch it.
Yeah,
Especially it's like Twin Fire watch it, especially if you've seen the show.
yeah.
So Mulholland Drive, don't hate it. I I feel David Lynch overplayed his hand a bit with it.
And I'll save my piece on Mulholland Drive later. My number, where we at number 7. It was kind of like a back and forth with these two. Um, and these are very interchangeable. So I'm gonna go with because I'll give my reasons for why in the next one is the Elephant Man. It's one that I didn't spend a lot of time with. It's again, I'm sad we missed it. Would we have appreciated it in high school? I don't know. I'd like to think we would. We're
Yeah,
smart enough, maybe, to be like,
yeah.
oh, this is different. But it is a beautiful film. It is a very um, hopeful film, and you don't get a lot of that with Lynch. Um, I won't say Lynch was a nihilist, but so much of his stuff has a nihilistic tone to it, and this movie does it. It's a beautifully acted, beautifully shot, beautifully human film. It's just not one that I've spent a lot of time with. And so for that reason it is a little lower than the ones that I have like myself dove deep into.
My #7 is Eraserhead for a debut movie. Man, knocked it out of the park. And that's the thing. I feel weird ranking these. It's like ranking at #7 doesn't mean I don't think it's an excellent movie because this is getting to the point where, like, I think Mulholland Drive is a really good movie. I think most of everything in my top 7 would classify as pretty excellent filmography.
Mm.
Um, it's a meaningful movie. I would argue it is David Lynch's most personal, especially given what he's going through at that time. Um, having both of us having gone through fatherhood and gone through being working class shows and whatnot, man, this spoke to me just watching it, and I just kept on telling myself, I get it. It's bizarre, but it also oddly makes a lot more sense than I thought it would. So, Eraserhead.
Which is my next one. And like I said, I could have interchanged with the Elephant Man. This one, just I had seeing it when I did again. Thank God we never saw this movie before being fathers. Like, um, it's one of those things like you don't understand that watching it before and after fatherhood. It's one of those things like in a weird way compared to like Pet Cemetery. Pet Cemetery, while being scary, is never as scary when you're young and single and without kids as it is when you're older and with children.
Yes.
This movie, as as a single guy, this movie does not hit. I mean, it's like, oh, what a weird movie. Hey, man, come over here and let's watch this weird movie. And there are movies that I love that we would have treated like that. Jesus Christ, Vampire Hunter, Ricky O. For more recently, for me, was The Greasy Strangler. Like, you want to see something fucked up and weird? Let's watch this. Having seen it after fatherhood, I'm like, oh man, this movie is saying a lot, and I'm clicking with almost all of it. So it definitely edges up a little higher because of that.
The world building does with this like ugly, grimy world, but I'm very limited. They don't use a lot of sets of this movie. A lot of it takes place in that apartment with the dead plant and the screaming mutant baby. It just man, it's like I felt this one. I felt it deep in my soul. Um, my #6 is Lost Highway. I love Lost Highway. I think it is a scary, awesome movie. Um, Hard to decipher, but man, it's like I finally felt like I understood it. I enjoy the hell out of Lost Highway, and yeah, it's one of those you. It's a little easier to understand than Mulholland Drive, but still confusing enough to give you a run for your money. I really, I think the cast is like most of the cast isn't like mainstream people. It's like Bill Pullman never quite made it to that A list. And Robert Loggia's supporting character, Balthazar Getty, same way, but they all think did great in this movie. It's some great cameos. Loved Lost Highway.
So my number 5 is it's Wild at Heart. Only because it is one of, while being weird, it is one of Lynch's more accessible ones. To me, what kind of, I don't say pushes it down, because again, it's just like, you're any filmmaker we talk about would kill for the like this lineup, this batting average. Um, but it's because it's one that's hard, not so much hard to go back to. I think of the other ones, it is because with the other films next on this list, with the exception of one, it's when every time I go back to them, I get something more out of it. Whereas I love Wild at Heart, but it's not one that continues to evolve with me. Also, it's one of those ones, like, it's a hard. Hang on. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm just shuffling my brain for a minute. Um, because it is so violent. It is one that is, thank you, is kind of hard to go back to. Although I think, bar none, this is top 5 Nick Cage for me. I think maybe Willem Dafoe's scariest bad guy. It could be argued. Um, but just because the other movies have evolved with me as I've continued to watch them, and this one kind of just sets in its little spot. And so for me, that's what puts it here at 5.
My 5 is Dude, and I will admit that in terms of just being a quality movie, the only movie that's worse than it is Inland Empire. Dude's just a personal favorite of mine. I've loved it my whole life. I find it a fascinating movie. I will randomly listen to some of the score on my phone at work. Uh, I quite enjoy it. What a cast! What a visual! What a score! What a mess of a movie that it is no mystery why it flopped. Um, I'll go ahead with my number 4. My number 4 is The Straight Story. Beautiful, simple, straightforward movie with a strong leading performance by Richard Farnsworth. It is a story of America itself and determination, and that we still have a lot of value even as we age, and society kind of looks past us. Great movie.
So yes, my number 4 is also The Straight Story, and this is the one that I did not, I because I couldn't see it. I did not see it until we were getting ready to do this. But this movie has such a beautiful and emotional story to it. Like, it just, I just couldn't not think about it and and tear up at it days afterward. Like, it's literally, it is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and it is such an outlier, aside from the Elephant Man in this filmography. Maybe even more so than the Elephant Man, because the Elephant Man does have kind of that Lynchian darkness to it. This one is so just, again, like I said, because Lynch is often so nihilistic in his films, this is the most beautifully hopeful, um, just pieces of filmmaking ever, and just everything about it is just, um, uh, everything you like, the best of what the human story can be. Um, and it's just a beautiful piece of filmmaking. So my number three is Lost Highway. Uh, if we were making this after seeing Lost Highway for the very first time, it would have probably been closer to Inland Empire for me. I felt it weird and confusing, and I didn't get it, and it was just like, what is happening in this movie? But the more I watch it, the more I'm able to, at least for me, interpret what I'm seeing in it. Um, I find it one of the more interesting ones. I love. It is this weird horror film, uh, from a guy who did make horror films, and it's not ever, you'll never find it called a horror film, but this is a horror film. Um, and just the way it's a movie that begs to kind of be dissected and studied, and while also being very late 90s, which of that age, man, I that's, with Stranger Things, everybody's so, or were for a while, so nostalgic for the 80s. And I think this, there's that nostalgic for the 90s, but it's usually like the early 90s. I always 95 to 99 was always my sweet spot for the 90s. Like that late 90s just kind of ugh. I'm always kind of here for, and so it definitely has that. And I said it's for me the one that had the most potential to kind of be so much more. And like I said, the idea of doing Lost Highway as an anthology series, I'm like that should happen. um, but yeah, it's one of those ones, and it's so high because, like I said, every time I watch it, it evolves into something else, and so for that alone, it's my number three.
My number three is Wild at Heart. I love how wild this movie is and the performances. Uh, One of my favorite Nicolas Cage performances, strange movie. As you pointed out, Willem Dafoe as the terrifying, nasty as hell Bobby Peru. You get a musical scene, you get fantasy, you get Wizard of Oz references. It's an accessible David Lynch movie and one I personally am very fond of. Well, my number two, Elephant Man, a very straightforward story, a biopic on a tortured soul, a beautiful soul. Getting, prime Anthony Hopkins in there to act in it was stellar. This should have won more Academy Awards. I don't think it actually won any Academy Awards. John Hurt's performance is inspiring and one of the great performances of that era, in an era with some fantastic performances. Said Robert De Niro, I think, won as Jake LaMotta, Raging Bull. I'm gonna talk. I need to record a review of Raging Bull sometimes because I take great issue with that movie because you have John Merrick, this fascinating person, portrayed wonderfully by John Hurt. You have Jake LaMotta, played by Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro's a great actor, but a completely uninteresting human being. Just it's criminal. But then again, the Academy Awards have a long history of giving the award to the wrong person. Looking at you this last year for Demi Moore not winning for The Substance. Everybody should watch The Elephant Man. I think it's a wonderful movie. Um, it's the least David Lynch movie though, by far.
So my number two, I have a feeling, will be your number one. It's Blue Velvet, and I think objectively, Blue Velvet is David Lynch's best film. Um, it's a perfect mystery. It's a beautiful yet scathing look at uh, the America and the what is going on underneath all the all the 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 pretty dressing, what rust lies under it. It's the greatest film villain of all time over everybody else. Take that, the devil. It has some of the most memorable uh, to me scenes of it. I think about um, the scene with Dennis Hopper and Frank and Dorothy. Um, that scene in her apartment with Kyle MacLachlan in the closet is so terrifying. Um, the scene with Dean Stockwell is just so weird and weirdly like sweet between him and Frank. It's so bizarre, and you have all these great tertiary characters. Lord Dern's fantastic in it. Brad Dourif, who's in it, and the great Jack Nance, who was in all of Lynch's stuff as like this weird little like good luck charm for David Lynch. Um, Again, I think arguably it's Lynch's best film. And surprisingly, I think now has a lot of for all the praise that both the Elephant Man here in the States and then Wild at Heart received, abroad. This is weirdly lost in the shuffle because you have some of the best performances. The filmmaking is impeccable, and it's the only one of David Lynch movies that got turned into quite a great Alkaline Trio song. So, Blue Velvet's number two.
And it's my number one. I think it's an excellent movie. I think it's his probably objectively his best, although you could make an argument that The Elephant Man is. But this is definitely it's still very much a David Lynch movie. There's still that mystery, there's still that intrigue, there's still this cast of fascinating characters. It's great. It's beautifully shot. It's creepy. It's unsettling. It'll make you question what's going on around you. It will put you on the edge of your seat, and it gave us one of the most enduring, terrifying villains of cinema. And it showed us the prime Kyle MacLachlan. Two of the best performances from, well, three of the best performances. Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini, and Dennis Hopper. This is probably my favorite performance for all three of those actors. Blue Velvet's great. And I got a sneaky suspicion what your number one is.
Number one for me, it's Mulholland Drive, and like I said, while Blue Velvet is unobjectively David Lynch's greatest movie, this is the one I don't know if it was just the right time at the right place. I was in the right mood, but because I had seen other Lynch to this point, but for whatever reason, setting down that morning off to watch Mulholland Drive, it just something about it grabbed me, and all these years later, still hasn't let go. And showing, revisiting it with Amber, and really like digging into it with her, and then doing the review over it, kind of where I broke down like how I interpret the movie, and again after the things happened in Hollywood in the mid aughts, seeing it kind of being looked at as this weirdly prophetic piece of Hollywood. Plus, it's fun. So many crap movies get so much praise heaped on them because of how they portray Hollywood, and usually the movies that kind of portray it the way it is get lost in the shuffle. Um, and it's just a piece of filmmaking that I think this is him firing on all cylinders. This is him at his apex, and again, it's just for me. It's if anybody asks what's your favorite movie, I think it's one of my favorite filmed movies. It's a movie that grows with me. Every time I watch it, I'm able to get more and more out of it. It has some of the best uh, performances in it. It's to me it's the very best you can get when you think David Lynch, and so that's why it's my number one.
I able I have a pretty good idea what kind of how your list would be laid out, and more or less went like I thought. I know Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, we're going to be way up there for you. Um, it was great doing this episode. You know, it was good that I was laid up. You know, I had plenty of time to really watch and contemplate these movies in my room up here while I was convalescing. Um, it also came with a great deal of sadness, knowing that this is it. This is all we're going to get from David Lynch. Man, what a legacy he left. And I'll be watching every movie except for Inland Empire all over again at some point in the future. But I feel for us this was a deeply personal episode, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
Sorry if anybody. So we've been having some technical issues. Apparently, we've sounded fine to everybody out there, but we've had issues hearing and talking to each other a bit here and there.
So I think now at the end I figured out what it is, and it's the stupidest thing. Or you want to know what it is, or you want it to stay a Lynchian mystery for you?
Sure.
So I have a pair of headphones, not these, because they're big and over the ear, but I have some smaller in the ear headphones that I'll take to work. Because when I go to work at 6:45 and I'm doing stuff, I'll pop in an earbud. I'm usually listening to an audiobook. Speaking of, I'm listening to the Batman Resurrection, which is a novel. It's a novel. It's a direct sequel to Batman '89. Pretty good. But they're over there in my bag for work. And I'm pretty sure when I turn my Bluetooth on to connect to these, it connected to those as well. And so it's like doing this weird autofocus where it's linking between headphones. So that's why I'm coming in and out with it. So, yay, professionals.
Yes. We continue to refine our craft to do better moving forward. It's still better than we were doing back in our Facebook days, so I'll take it.
That's true. So, with that being said, that's going to kind of bring I won't say it'll bring our David Lynch to a close, because we will at some point. You're going to definitely have to give us some time to do it, to deep dive into what is Twin Peaks, for sure. But next month, we're doing something. I don't know if we've ever really done an episode quite like what we have planned for next month. We're not doing a particular film series, or we're not really ranking films. We are comparing two versions of the same film genre. Because next month we are asking the question, what's better? Is one better? But we're looking at sexy versus scary vampires. So you're not going to want to miss that, because we're going to be covering a lot of films of both the most horrifying and the most titillating Nosferatus that are out there. Mustaches and all. You're not going to want to miss that live. And then this week, again, like I said, I haven't been able to get to the theater. So this week, I believe I am putting up... Oh, so this will be fun. So if you enjoyed this, if you want to see what happened, if you want to see a man go through his own Lynchian film, the video I believe I have going up tomorrow is because, like I said, they are getting rid of the live videos, so I had to harvest all of our live videos from Facebook, get them on Amber's computer. Have been going through adding new title cards and music and recutting them. But for 4 years, 4 years, because I was in my early 20s and an idiot, I thought, what better thing to do for Halloween than to sit down and live stream my reviews as I sat down and watch an entire horror film franchise in one sitting. And so that's what's going up is the very first Halloween mega binge in 2016, where I started at like 9 o'clock on a Friday night, because again, young and dumb. And I watched every single Halloween film. From John Carpenter's OG Halloween all the way into, at that time, the final Halloween movie, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. In one night. I'll say one night. From one night into the next day, with no breaks, no sleep, just marathoned it. And so, if you want to watch me go through it, that'll be the video that goes up tomorrow on our YouTube channel for our weekly YouTube video. And the next month, like I said, we're talking vampires, because that new in correlations, I guess, with that new Ryan Coogler movie that's coming out that looks kind of awesome. I'm super excited about seeing Sinners. So we're covering vamps. But that's all I've got for this month. Nick, as always, it's super good. We get to do these deep dive videos and just hang out and talk about movies. And like I said, we will definitely have time soon where we can discuss, because you guys don't know this, but Nick and I watched 3 movies.
Yes.
3 very different, very wild and weird movies.
Yeah.
So we will get together and talk about those for sure.
We will coordinate and we will review those, because, man, we got to share what we watch with you all.
Yeah.
Man.
But until then, guys, as always, thank you so much for hanging out with us. You guys in the chat. Yeah, do yourself a favor. Go pour yourself a cup of hot coffee. Maybe get a slice of cherry pie and sit down and dive into the world of David Lynch. It's a good time. It's a hard time. I hope you're ready for some homework, but it's a good time. And until then, I will see you guys. We'll see you guys next time.
See you later.
Bye. All right, and we're out.